You're listening to XOXO Famira, the podcast for visionaries, truth tellers, and empire builders who are done performing, shrinking, and sleepwalking through their purpose. This is where soul meets strategy, where your brand becomes spiritual technology, and where you finally wake up from your spiritual amnesia and remember who the hell you are. I'm your host, Famira, head dream walker in charge, business oracle, owner, and your brand transformation guide. I am the alchemist, and every episode is a permission slip to move with clarity, confidence, and command. Let's get into it. You weren't meant to be the fuel, you were meant to be the flame, and anything that dims your fire to keep running isn't a brand, it's bondage. Welcome back to XOXO Famira, the sacred, sharp, and slightly sanctified space where branding becomes a blueprint for liberation. I am your host, the head dream worker in charge, Famira, and I am so excited today to really dive into this next topic around essentially rest and creating space for rest inside of our businesses. And I'm going to be pulling back this veil on the question that separates brands that burn out from those who actually bend time. And that question is your brand a true empire, or is it just really a pretty prison, right? So let's dive in, shall we? Okay, so let's just be real. When we come into building our businesses and our brands, we're so excited. We, about everything. We're ready to get things going. And for the most part, a lot of us, if we don't come in with knowledge of owning a business, we get into this place of burnout, right? Because you feel like you have to be on all the time. Your presence is necessary, right? So you create this business that's bound to your presence. You being there, especially for us in the coaching industry, is such a thing. And then what ends up happening is now you don't just have a brand, you literally have this high performing hostage situation, right? You have a business and a brand that is literally holding you hostage in order for it to grow, right? And for it to sustain. And, of course, people are going to say, well, I love what I do and I am excited about the work that I do. Totally get it. Totally true. I'm there with you. And also, right, this is a yes and situation. And also, if you're not careful, you really create a situation that is difficult to rectify sometimes. And this is how businesses go out of business, because the person is burnt out. So let's break this open, right? Let's really build on what it means to build something that breathes without actually begging, right? Something that is going to speak to the legacy of what you are creating, but is not labor intensive all the time in all the ways, right? So we're going to break this episode down into a couple of segments of conversation that I want to have. And this first segment is your brand is either a portal or a performance, right? So I see this so often working with women in the coaching industry, those that a lot of my clients are in health and wellness, ironically, right? They're in health and wellness. They're spiritual entrepreneurs. They're in roles like being real estate agents, nursing, therapists, things along that line, right? So those are the types of women that I often work with. Not exclusively, that, people from other industries do work with me as well. I feel like you gotta say all the things, because then people be like, well, I thought that's all you work with. But I digress. Those tend to be the service-based industries that I actually work with women in. And because those people are oftentimes doing work that speaks to the well-being of others, they often forgo their own well-being for the sake of the client, right? So what happens is so many women end up building businesses that literally can't breathe without them always being in this state of being on social, on Zoom, on edge, right? Like they're always in the space of like, they have to be on, they have to be performing. Hey, I'm here, right? And that's not sovereignty. That is literally you building a pretty prison for yourself. That is literally you building a job for yourself, which most most of you are running from, which is the whole reason why you want to create a actual business and an empire, not only for the impact, but for the sovereignty that it gives you, right? And oftentimes, because everything looks so good put together and all of the things, then it's like, oh, because the aesthetic is nice, I really have it get together. I have it all together, but you are on the verge of literally crashing out, right? And so I want to present a different perspective, and that is this idea that you can create the brand of your dreams without having to build it based on trends, and more so looking at timelines, and not physical timelines like, oh, I have to be here in 3 months, or oh, I have to be here in 6 months. No, when I'm talking about timelines in this situation, it is the timeline of the vision that you want to carry out, because reality is time is a made up construct. This is why it feels like time is speeding up, right? I mean, hey, look at it. We're already in May. It's about to be June next week, right? And it literally feels like this year just started. When I'm talking about a timeline, I'm talking about the scope of your actual vision, right? And remembering your future and your future self, and that you're building for her now, right? So you need to ask yourself this question as we move into the rest of this episode. If I rested, would my brand resist or rise, right? Because oftentimes you build stuff in and you resist it because you're not even used to it yourself. You are looking to rise up, but we've been told our whole lives that resting means that we're lazy or we're not productive, and there's always something that we can be doing, right? And so this is why people, whether you like it or don't like the saying, but this is where that saying of rest is revolutionary comes from, right? Because we as Black women and as women of color and women in general, right, have oftentimes been told that our productivity is tied to our purposefulness, and therefore if we are resting, we are not being productive in the capitalistic sense of what productivity looks like. And so therefore we subconsciously resist this idea of rest, and therefore then your brand resists it, because your brand is essentially an extension of yourself. So yeah, but let's talk about my good girl Rihanna. She's one of my faves, and just in a way in which she has transcended business and done so very purposefully as well as very successfully, right? So this is segment 2, the Rihanna reframe, the blueprint of a breathing brand, right? So what does this look like? I'm going to use her as an example. She's not on tour anymore. She's not dropping albums. She's not doing press runs. And yet her empire continues to expand every single day. And this is because she did what most people are scared to do, and she literally unhooked her income from her little visibility, right? Rihanna shows up when she wants to. I'm someone who follows her on social media. A lot of her stuff is branded photos, photo shoots and things of that nature. She shows up every now and then, tosses us something real. We love it. It's all good. But she decided she didn't have to only have a brand that went specifically with her singing. I mean, people been asking for a Rihanna album for a decade now, and she ain't doing it. She literally stopped feeding that particular machine, and she decided to actually build a infrastructure or ecosystem, as I like to call it, an empire ecosystem for herself. And so the key thing about an empire is you have essentially the main, when you're thinking about empires as far as countries are concerned, you have the main country, the host country of the empire, and then that empire goes out into other lands and lays claims to other areas, and now those areas become part of the empire, right? So one of the most famous empires is the Roman Empire. So they would go out, they would conquer other lands, and then those lands became part of the Roman Empire. So you had all these different cities, all these different countries that became essentially part of this Roman Empire. And so I like to think of my multi-passionate ladies out there. This is definitely, make sure you're listening up to this aspect of it, is creating an empire ecosystem. So Rihanna herself is essentially the host brand. And then she went out and conquered these other spaces to create what her own ecosystem. She literally turned her essence, her frequency into a full-on ecosystem. So then she had her music aspect of things, the albums. Then she created Fenty Beauty, Savage Fenty, Fenty Skin. She has luxury partnerships, and then she just recently did hair. So she has hair products, right? She's done a perfume as a part of it, and it's all very sexy, very stacking, right? Like it's all very much who she is, but she's created these different pockets, right? That are all able to run by themselves, right? And I know you all that may be listening are like, okay, yeah, that's great, but I don't really have a desire to have a bunch of separate brands. But you could do this all within one brand. So this looks like, you having digital products, you having a group program, you having a mastermind, you having a membership, all of those things, you can build them so that they sustain and run on their own automatically. Right? And so for Rihanna, while the world essentially was continuously begging her for new music, she literally was like, you'll feel me through my movement, not just my microphone, right? And so that is one of her quotes. And she really built a brand that could hold her, not just hype her up, right? And that is this whole Fenty conglomerate that she's created. And so when she decided to, why this is significant, right, is because when she did this, she put all these things in place. So then when she decided to actually start her family, we know she had been in the headlines for having to, standing by A$AP Rocky while he was going through his legal, headline issues. She even disappeared for a while, right? But when she did all of those things, her empire not just survived, it literally multiplied, right? That's because she really built it from this place of alignment. Things that were important to her, that were in line with who she is, not just off the adrenaline or the hype of what she had always known, which was music, right? She allowed herself to literally scale her spirit and not just her spotlight. There's so many lessons that we as women entrepreneurs really can learn, is that building things up front, setting up the foundation, getting things like well-oiled machines allows for us to have more freedoms to show up in the way in which we want to later on down the line, right? So now let's look at segment 3, and that is 3 signs you're building for the algorithm and not the afterlife, right? And what do I mean by this, right? Not the super scary afterlife, but I just mean your afterlife, your life after all of this, right? Hopefully at some point you're going to want to retire, or you may want to be able to decrease the number of, one-on-one clients that you have, or the amount of front-facing presence that you have to have inside of your brand. You need to know, can your offers actually run without you? If you're the funnel, the follow-up, and the fulfillment, then, you're an emotional laborer. You're not really in your CEO bag. And that makes a difference, right? So that is not going to set you up to be able to walk away or to take a lesser dominant role inside of your brand in the future. And that future might be 10 years from now, 20 years from now. You might be like, Famira, I love what I do, and I'll do this until I, leave this place. But you want to be able to do it on your own terms, right? You don't want to, it's always great to do something because you want to do it and not because you have to do it. And so that's what I'm talking about here. The other thing is you have to stop shifting your voice to chase what's hot, right? Chasing trends and tracing, this is the way in which the industry is going, so I'm going to hurry up and run over there and try to become that thing. And a lot of times that happens, in my personal opinion, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs out here literally suffering from brand spiritual amnesia. And so they just be out here tweaking for the trends instead of twerking, right? Tweaking for the trends instead of actually anchoring into the truth of who they are and how they've been designed and what their actual purpose is and what their actual calling is. And so, They're just out here trying to do all the things, trying to attract the attention of the algorithm instead of really focusing on their own identity, which is what actually creates room and space for influence to happen and to take place, right? And then we see this because your content becomes reactive. Your content is always chasing a moment, right? Your content is always on to the next thing. It's always trying to be tied into something else. It's not reverent. It's not, really digging deep in regards to like who you are and what you desire and being connected to the spiritual essence of who you are. It's always reacting to something else that's going on the timeline, right? And you're not a news journalist. So, for my news journalists out there, then reactive is the thing because you got to wait for the news to happen in order to report the news, right? But the rest of us, like, we don't have to always be reactive. Is reactivity in and of itself wrong? No. Is it bad practice? No. You should definitely use current events, things that are going on, to be able to infuse them. I mean, our episode last week, I talked about how in which them having the new pope as well as the Met Gala theme, and tie that together in a nice little bow around how it's important for you to not be afraid to be the unlikely one in the situation. So if you haven't checked out that episode, here's a shameless plug. Definitely go check out that episode here on the podcast. You may enjoy that as well. So it's, you could be reactive when you're creating relevancy, but you should not always be in a state of reaction for your content, because your content should be reverent, should be creating a space for the divine to speak through you to your particular audience that you are here to work with. So you shouldn't be chasing moments. You should be commanding movements. And so if you are somebody that's doing any one of those three things, if you're someone who your offers can't run without you, if you are someone where you are constantly shifting your voice to chase what's hot, or you are that one with your content is reactive and not reverent, I just want you to take a moment with me, pause, breathe, and really let that land in your spirit, right? You were never meant to be marketable. You were meant to be the movement. That is the truth of being someone who is operating in your God calling, in your own personal purpose for what you're here to do, what is actually you are here, your life's work, what you are here to allow to fulfill yourself, right? When you understand this, then it's not just only about being marketable. It is about actually birthing this movement that you're here to create. And that's essentially what Rihanna has done, right? She has created a space. It wasn't just about chasing trends for her. It was about something deeper. The whole big thing that came up from her first launch of Fenty was the fact that she came out with such an extensive color array of foundations, right? That was something that the industry had not gotten right, and that was something that was important to her. She could have continued to chase the trend of just coming out with, a few of these, and not really looking to cater, but she held off on the launch of her brand until they had the assortment that she actually wanted, right? And in turn, because she did that, it made her more marketable, but she wasn't chasing the marketability. That was something that was important to her as a Black Caribbean woman, right? And so we begin to see that example, that thread essentially that is moving through it. Segment 4, build a brand that breathes when you don't speak. What do I mean by that? At the end of the day, y'all, like, I am someone that teaches content creation, that teaches messaging, of course, branding, creating your offers, all these things. But the goal is literally not more content for content's sake. It's just not. It's really about creating this energetic infrastructure, this empire ecosystem that is really going to help you. So what does that look like? You want to have a couple of things in place, just 3 things that, I talk about. And so that's really these sacred systems. That's going to be your workflows, right? That really honor your genius and really protect your peace. And so you having workflows, you having frameworks inside of the work that you actually do, so that you have a laid out journey that people people are walking through when they come to work with you. I mean, it just protects your peace of mind because then you don't feel all over the place, right? Having embodied offers. These are products or services that really carry your voice, but don't necessarily always have to have your presence. So this may look like a workshop that's already been recorded, right? It's a self-study program. You can have courses, you can have any type of digital products, ebooks, journals, all of these different things where you don't have to actually be present for them, right? In order for them to work, in order for them to carry on. And then ultimately your aligned automations. And I'm just gonna be honest with y'all, the aligned automations I have not been the best with, even myself. So I'm talking to you all as I'm talking to me on this one as well. And this is that to really create tech systems that sell like you, serve like you, and actually support like you. So not just putting a funnel together for funnel's sake, but as people are moving through this automated funnel, do they actually feel like they are working with you? Do they still feel connected to you because you have it set up so well in this particular flow, right? Or you want to make sure that you're not moving from this space of escapism, but from expansion. And so that is literally what Rihanna did. That's what a lot of your favorite coaches have done. And it's something that you have space to do as well. Segment 5, a word on rest, remembrance, and power. If you need rest, sis, take the rest. If you need to go silent, go sacredly silent, right? But your brand should still speak in the rooms that you've never entered. So that might look like you have to have your content scheduled out. This is why I am always going to be a fan. I don't care how much people resist it, what people gotta say. I'm always going to be a fan of you having some level of batch content in your back pocket, right? So even for my spiritual people who are like, I have to be inspired and I have to know and I have to kind of be in a zone, I get that. I am somebody that's like that. However, and also two things can be true at once. You can still create batch content that can go out and still create inspired content. What do I mean? This looks like if you create content, you want to have batch content that's going to go to your social medias, to your email list, to wherever, a couple of times a week or once a day, whatever fits for you and your brand, that you have that done. You have it created, you have it scheduled so that it's set up. And then as you're moving throughout your day, throughout your life, as you become inspired and there's something that you need people to know right now, you can still post it. You can still do the real, sis. You can still show up on the stories, right? You could still go live and say all the things. But when you do that and you're in a state of creating this batch content, what that also means is on the days where you don't feel inspired, on the days when you need that rest, the days when you just don't feel like talking, you don't want to hit play, you don't want to go live, you don't feel like writing a sentence, you already have stuff that is going out into the world. It's still out there talking for you. It's still out there creating that legacy. It's still out there liberating the people. It's still out there creating longevity, right? And so that is important. And it allows to take the stress off, right? Off of you. Because at the end of the day, I want you to remember you are not the machine. You are the message, right? And so that message really should echo through time, space, systems, silence, seasons. We all go through different seasons, and you want your business to continue to be able to grow and scale and do all the things even while you are there in that moment. So here's a reflection for you to sit with and ask yourself and journal about if you choose to accept the mission, right? And that is, if you decided to vanish for 6 months, would your brand still move money, miracles, and meaning? Would it still create the impact that you desire to have in the world? If the answer is no, know first of all that you're not alone in that answer and that you don't need to hustle. You need to actually heal your business model, right? And there are some things that you just need to put in place to then make that answer yes, right? So it's not about beating yourself up or, any of those things. It's about, what do I need to do moving forward so that this is no longer an issue. This is no longer a thing, right? And so ultimately what I want you all to do, all my dream walkers out there that are listening to this episode, just pick one power move today. Just pick one thing to stop being your brand's engine right? And to be more of an architect. Just pick one thing. So you may decide to automate one of your systems. You may decide, okay, I need an actual support person, even if it's just for 2 hours a week, right? 5 hours a week, but I need somebody that can support me in a couple of things. It may even look like raising the price on one of your services to actually create the space for the rest, right? Because it's going to shift the income that's coming in, which will allow for more space for that. It may look like reclaiming a boundary, right, that you've allowed to go loose. And it may be also on the other side, archiving an offer that that you've outgrown. But whatever it is, pick one thing that is going to be a step towards you actually being able to build rest. Maybe you're like me and you're going to pick 1 week a month to not deal with any clients, to be your week of rest. I know for some of y'all might be like, oh, a week is too much. So maybe you have a specific day during the week that there's no business that's happening, right? So for me, Mondays and Fridays, I also don't take clients on Mondays and Fridays unless it's special circumstances, but those are because those are my admin days. Those are the days in which I do my recordings, my production days. So you may decide to do something like that as well, right? At the end of the day, I just want you to know what you're building, right? And sometimes the reality is, you're not building a side hustle. You're not building a personal brand even. Yeah, what? I said that? You're not building a personal brand. No, but a lot of times, most of you that are listening, that have been drawn to this podcast, whether you already knew me or you're new here, you are someone who is literally building a portal for other people's transformations. And in order to do that, you need to have your rest. You need to be up and equipped and energetic and energized for the task at hand. And so I hope that you will take what I've shared inside of this podcast, take these lessons from our girl Rihanna, bad girl Riri, and create that empire ecosystem for yourself that allows you the space to get the rest that you need, so that your brand is able to continue to breathe when you decide you need to take a breather. All right. So don't forget to rate and review and follow us in order to watch our mini drops that happen on Mondays and our full episodes that happen here on Thursdays, because strategy without sovereignty is just performance, and we're building powerhouses over here. Okay. So I can't wait to see you all next week. Until next time, XOXO Famira. You're listening to XOXO Famira, the podcast for visionaries, truth tellers, and empire builders who are done performing, shrinking, and sleepwalking through their purpose. This is where soul meets strategy, where your brand becomes spiritual technology, and where you finally wake up from your spiritual amnesia and remember who the hell you are. I'm your host, Famira, head dream walker in charge, business owner, and your brand transformation guide. I am the alchemist. In every